G'day mate, it's me Jack Wright here, and we're here at Adelaide in South Australia for the exciting and long-awaited 1995 championship finale of the 1995 FIA Formula 1 World Championship. And it's certainly we are in for one exciting race to end an truly incredible but quite unpredictable and quite eventful season. And we're going to be looking at it as we're only just a few days away from finding out if Germany's Michael Schumacher, current world champion, can defend his current FIA Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship title over the Flying Scotsman of Williams', that being David Coulthard. And only one of them can become world champion in just a few days' time. And we're going to preview the upcoming and exciting championship finale race, that being the 17th and final round of the 1995 FIA Formula 1 World Championship with the 1995 EDS Australian Grand Prix, as welcome to the Grand Prix Formula 1 1995 Championship Finale Preview Special. So once again, here we are at the one and only street circuit in Adelaide for once again this being the scene of the 17th and final round of this year's reimagined 1995 FIA Formula 1 World Championship with the upcoming 1995 EDS Australian Grand Prix. And unbelievably, this will be the final time that this circuit will be used, since it has been used since the late 80s. I think the last time that you have to go back, I think, to when this circuit was first used, I think you have to go back to, I think it was, as a guess, I think 1985, if I actually have a quick look here, just to be sure. But once again, it is a pleasure, as always, to be back here, and once again, following an impressive race victory for the former British driver, who's now retired now permanently from Formula 1, as you do remember him coming back from earlier on in this season, that being Nigel Mansell. He won here last year in 1994, and once again, to remind you all that the last time that the Grand Prix was held was back in 1985, so I wasn't far away there, so almost, like I said, 10 years ago to as it was based here in this series. And once again, to remind you that it also is known as the Adelaide Parklands circuit, and once again it was first opened back on the 31st of October 1985, and it was also owned by the Adelaide City Council. And once again, to remind you that the length of the circuit is 3.780 kilometres, which is 2.349 miles, and it has hosted, once again, 11 Grand Prix, and this will be, more specifically counting this one, will be the last circuit to, once again, time that this circuit hosts this Grand Prix, as of next year in 1996 we'll be heading to a brand new purpose-built street circuit, that being also known as Albert Park in Melbourne from, like I said, from the start of next year. And also it will open the new season of 1995, and determining on who will becoming world champion, who will get that coveted #1 on their car for next year's season. And it's very exciting indeed once again to be covering this all-important race. As you know, here on this series of Grand Prix Formula 1, we have had it all in this series. We've had unpredictable race results. We've had quite erratic AI behaviour from some of the drivers, and also we can get straight on with that. It's just to remind you all, if you were with us from just a few weeks ago for the that being the last round of the Japanese Grand Prix, for once again the 16th and penultimate round of this reimagined championship. And we do know there was one particular thing that happened from at the towards the end of the last race, and that's involving the Japanese driver of Aguri Suzuki. And as once again the race winner himself, Germany's Michael Schumacher in his Benetton Renault, when he came in for, I think it was his second pit stop, he while he was slowing down into the pit lane exit, the AI were actually speeding into the pit lane towards to the entry to the pit lane, and then having to then limit the speed of the cars because of the obviously they couldn't speed within the actual pit lane area. And I can actually do recall that looking back on the previous results, that following quite a dangerous incident that involved a rear-ending once again Michael Schumacher at the end or towards the front part, or just leading up to the main pit lane entry of going into then pit for wet weather tyres, as it was a wet race last time out at Suzuka. We found out from the FIA that it is being confirmed that following dangerous driving he was to be disqualified, as of he was very dangerous driving into the rear end of once again Schumacher's Benetton, and that does mean that he is now been given a one race ban. So that meaning he will be we can clarify that he will be missing the final race in just a few days time. And also there has been talks also of following the unexpected quite dangerous driving also for the likes of Heinz-Harald Frentzen for the Red Bull Sauber Ford team, and as not to mention even though that he was in his place following his operation for appendicitis, Mika Hakkinen, the young Danish driver, the substitute driver for Marlboro McLaren Mercedes, he also picked up a disqualification for multiple contact warnings, as well as Mark Blundell, and he is set to possibly miss out on the final race also as well, following still down to that dangerous driving that he did countless times at the previous two races. But all that aside, we do know that also Mika Hakkinen is back racing with the team, and we hope that he'll be wanting to finish the race on a high, following of course the practice sessions from earlier on today. And we will be of course be having an update on how we got in qualifying from on when we get to the highlights program of once again covering the 17th and final round of this year's championship with the Australian Grand Prix. And now let's of course let's quickly remind you of the current situation also in the Drivers' Championship at the moment. And once again we can clarify that as of already the Rotherham's Williams Renault team have already secured the 1995 Constructors Championship title, as they are currently leading with 112 points to Benetton's 99 points. So they were 14 points behind, so that meaning that going into the final race with only 10 points up for grabs in both championship, of course, tables, that means that unfortunately unfortunately, they have just missed out on the championship there, unfortunately, for another year. But a brilliant performance, some dominant performances from the likes of both the British drivers of Damon Hill and David Coulthard. But let's remind you currently on the current situation in the Drivers' Championship at the moment. And once again, to remind you, after his 4th race victory of the 1995 FIA Formula 1 World Championship season so far, Michael Schumacher is leading the championship by 72 points, and he is 9 points away from the Flying Scotsman of David Coulthard. So as it stands, and since also David Coulthard, who is in 3rd, his once again his English Williams teammate with 54 points now, he is currently 18 points behind also Michael Schumacher as well. So meaning that wherever he finishes, it won't be enough. Even if Michael Schumacher does retire, this, of course, is going to be all important. As long as Michael Schumacher wins the race in just a few days' time, he will secure the Drivers' Championship. But that's all going to go down to also, like I said, he can once again finish out of the points. As long as David Coulthard doesn't win, he will be once again defending his current FIA Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship title for once again a 2nd year in succession. And we do remember that this time last year, as we got to this final race, there was nothing in it between both Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill when it went to the final race. And then we do unfortunately remember an unfortunate collision that happened. I think it was more specifically, as we can quickly remind you of what happened in the last year's race here at Adelaide. And it was such a shame it went to finish in the way that it happened. And it's also interesting to know that also, as well as we mentioned with Nigel Mansell being the previous winner here from last year, it was also the last time that a Formula 1 driver aged over 40 years old would have won a Grand Prix race. And that is absolutely insane that he did that. And also to remind you that Austrian Gerhard Berger in his Ferrari finished 2nd, and also the fellow British driver also of from Kings Lynn, Martin Brundle, in his McLaren powered his Peugeot powered McLaren, also took 3rd place. He had quite an impressive season there. And we do know that Nigel Mansell also managed to get pole position also with a time of 1 minute 16.179 hundredths of a second. But we do know that despite it being closing one of the most tragic seasons in the history of the sport so far, following, as we know, the unfortunate deaths of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger, as we were marking the 1-year anniversary since the death of both those drivers. We do know that there was one particular situation that happened where unbelievably it does say here where which both drivers had to force to retire, and following just the point gap going into the last race, that secured the win for Michael Schumacher in quite the controversial way, it has to be said, because we do know that it was 92 points to 91 for Damon Hill. And there was also Williams were leading the Constructors Championship with 108 points, while they were only 5 points behind Benetton were. But as we do remember, until lap 36, when Schumacher went off the track at the East Terrace corner and hitting a wall with his right side tyres and going onto the track, and then when Damon Hill was going to go into the 5th corner, when Schumacher pulled to the side of him, on the outside of him, trying to go for a move, they both collided. He went on 2 wheels and then went straight into the tyre barrier, and that meaning that he was eliminated straight away. And he attempted to continue the race, but then ended up pitting immediately following the unexpected damage on his car. but he struggled with a irreparable damage from the front left suspension wishbone, and as neither driver scored, Michael Schumacher, controversially, in quite the controversial conditions, took the title there following that particular incident there. But once again, Nigel Mansell then took the lead until his second pit stop, and then once again we had, it mentions also here that as of outside of the Jackpot Button Lewis Productions sports universe, he remains the last driver to win a Grand Prix Formula 1 race over the age of 40 years old. But we do know, it says here, that Michael Schumacher was blamed from the incident from many insiders, of course, and the press, even though he won the championship. There was, of course, after investigation, the race stewards judged it as a racing incident and took no action against Michael Schumacher. And it's interesting to know that now, since he is aged 26 years old, from last year he was 25, he was the first German Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship champion, given that Jochen Rindt, who was initially, he competed under the nationality of Austrian, his adoptive country. He appeared in under highly controversial circumstances. He always maintained that the collision was a racing incident, and a view that was met with a large degree of media cynicism, in particular here in the UK, and he had been blamed for the incident mostly by the public in the UK. And it's also it's quite interesting to know that as of even though he won the championship, Damon Hill, even though he missed out on just one single point in the championship, he also still managed to secure the title of BBC Sports Personality of the Year as well. But it's interesting to know that even Murray Walker has also mentioned here as well. Even though he avoided becoming involved in the outcry at the time, in later years he explicably accused Schumacher of deliberately driving into him, which I'm sure that he still thinks about that at the moment also as well. And even Murray Walker said here he maintained that Schumacher did not cause the crash intentionally, while his co-commentators, even though we don't have, of course, him, I normally would take over from the likes of Jonathan Palmer, and then we have here that we know that Martin Brundle is competing for one last year in Formula 1, for one more year, as he's heading to the Total Jordan Peugeot team from next year. And he is set to maybe possibly joining Murray Walker again, as he did occasionally appear in there when he didn't race most of the particular rounds of this year's championship. But it also, we did also have former motorbike champion Barry Sheene also arguing that the crash was entirely Schumacher's fault. And it's interesting to know that Patrick Head, the main principal of the Rotherham's Williams team, and also make that a co-founder also and former engineering director of the Williams Formula 1 team, he did say that to the F1 Racing magazine that in that year of 1994, that Williams were already 100% certain that Michael was guilty of foul play, but did not protest Schumacher's title because the team was still dealing with the death of Ayrton Senna, whom Schumacher dedicated the title after his death at the San Marino Grand Prix from earlier on, as of last year also as well. And but there you go, everybody. That is what happened from last year's Grand Prix. It was quite eventful, and quite the eventful end to quite an unbelievable season. And even though it's done differently here in this series, all through the control of, once again, the game itself of Formula 1, as we still have it in our in the case right here. It's been an absolute privilege to relive this particular season through the, of course, the world of this particular game. And it's crazy to think that, as I mentioned before, right at the beginning of the series, next year will mark 30 years since this game came out, even though it is based on the season before it of 1995. and we've had some truly incredible moments throughout this series. I think one had to be involving collisions with teammates and pit stops, and also I think the most shocking, and most surprise result we've had all season long in this series of Grand Prix Formula 1 has to be the impressive race victory for the first time in his Formula 1 career, that being Northern Irishman Eddie Irvine winning at the Hungarian Grand Prix. No, my apologies, actually the Portuguese Grand Prix. That was actually Damon Hill who actually won there. And but we can also remind you of the current situation with the amount of wins that we've had. Over 6 different drivers win most of the races in this year's reimagined 1995 FIA Formula 1 World Championship. And if you're seeing on your screen right now, we of course have got a tally of all of the wins from the 6 drivers that have won throughout this year's reimagined 1995 Formula 1 season. Scotsman David Coulthard is currently on 4 race victories for being the first driver also to win at the Brazilian Grand Prix from right at the beginning of this reimagined Formula 1 season. And then also we have Johnny Herbert, who has also got 2 race victories following his first unexpected race victory at the Argentinian Grand Prix at once again Buenos Aires. And then also shortly after that was the British teammate, that being of Damon Hill, for David Coulthard, taking he was the 3rd race driver to take another race victory in this year's championship. And after that we had Michael Schumacher, who took his first race victory at the Spanish Grand Prix in an impressive comeback after pitting from last, I was going to say not in last place, but following him trying to catch up with Nigel Mansell, who had an incredible duel with the former 1992 world champion to finish just by a few seconds when it got to the final lap. And then we had John Alesi also taking his one and only race victory at the Monaco Grand Prix from, like I said, from earlier on this year as well. And oh, my apologies, that being actually Germany actually about halfway through the championship. And like I said, to remind you, we've had Damon Hill, once again Eddie Irvine, winning at the Portuguese Grand Prix. And as a quick reminder also, for if you have not seen already, we've updated the race winners of 1995 table for you, so you can see them all in full. So once again we've had an impressive first race victory for David Coulthard at the Brazilian Grand Prix, then Johnny Herbert winning in Argentina, and then another dominant performance from Williams with Damon Hill winning in the wet conditions at San Marino, and then followed shortly after by Michael Schumacher winning in Spain. And then once again an impressive double wins in both Canada and also Monaco, once again for David Coulthard. Then another impressive last lap race victory again for, once again, Germany's Michael Schumacher in France in the wet weather conditions, fending off quite an aggressive drive from Gerhard Berger in his Ferrari. And then an amazing home race victory for Johnny Herbert, which we certainly was not expecting that to happen, but it was amazing to see him win in front of the home fans. And also Rubens Barrichello getting on the podium for the first time in his Jordan, once again a Peugeot powered Jordan there for the team. And also once again that would happen again with Eddie Irvine when once again David Coulthard winning in Italy, as well as we jumped a few races there, of course, John Alesi winning in Germany. Such a shame for Michael Schumacher to also win his home race there. It was all down to him mistiming his pit stop, and also with an impressive drive also from Damon Hill at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Another dominant drive from Schumacher to win in Belgium over his championship rival, that being Hill as well. And an unexpected run out of fuel for Johnny Herbert at the Italian Grand Prix, and then we had to have a different driver for the remainder of the race, but we still clarified that with the results of the first part of that particular race. But an impressive drive once again from Eddie Irvine, once again just managing to finish a few seconds ahead of, once again, Michael Schumacher. Or I think that might be Damon Hill once more. Oh no, actually, that was actually correct, actually. I didn't mean to make that mistake. But then another great home race victory for Michael Schumacher in the wet at the European Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. And Damon Hill also, once again, winning the Pacific Grand Prix for Williams. And as of just last time out, the Japanese Grand Prix, once again, where Michael Schumacher secured his 4th race victory of the championship so far. And he could be looking forward to making it a 5th from later on in just a few days' time, because with that now being said, we of course have come to the end of this edition of Grand Prix Formula 1, and I know it might seem a bit short, but we have got a lot to cover going into the next episode, as we will be bringing you the championship finale as of on the month of November, and we are nearly there. It's been quite a challenge to bring this series to you, and especially with other things going on in my personal life, but it has been an absolute pleasure to bring this series to you, and I've been determined to get this finished regardless of what else has been going on outside of this series. But we are set for an incredible championship finale, and once again you can join us here on Jackpot Button Lewis Sport Productions, and we will be once again bringing you full extended race highlights of the final and 17th round of the 1995 FIA Formula 1 World Championship with the EDS Australian Grand Prix, here from once again the Adelaide Parklands street circuit here in Adelaide, South Australia, for an incredible championship finale. And only one driver out of the two, either the current world champion Germany's Michael Schumacher of Benetton and the flying Scotsman of David Coulthard in his Williams Renault. They have secured the drivers to make that Constructors Championship of 1995, but they are still on to possibly do the double, but that's all down to if David Coulthard can win the race and manage to hold off the German, that being Michael Schumacher, as current world champion. But we will be here in just a few days' time for the championship finale and the final episode of Grand Prix Formula 1, and once again for the final round of the 1995 reimagined FIA Formula 1 World Championship season. You certainly don't want to miss the episode when it finally comes out. We will be once again here in just a few days' time for the final round of this quite incredible and make that quite, like I said, unpredictable Formula 1 season. And we look forward to showing you everything that happens in just a few days' time. We will be there. We hope you will be. We'll see you in a few days' time for the final round of this year's Formula 1 World Championship season. Thanks for watching. We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye for now. If you enjoyed this race here on Jackpot Button Lewis Productions, let me know on what you thought of the race by giving a like on this video and subscribing so you never miss out on future races with more exciting classic retro Grand Prix racing action. And also once again, let us know on your thoughts on the video by commenting down below in the, of course, comment box. And we look forward to seeing you for some more exciting, more future Grand Prix racing action, all here on Jackpot Button Lewis Productions here on YouTube.